everybody. This is William del Pilar, and this is Points on the Board. I usually have a little snazzy monologue I love to do, but life has been busy, And the other thing I wanted to note is I'm pretty much the standard bearer for this show. As we started with Big John, we went to Eddie Aparicio, then there was Joe and Jimmy, and I want to introduce to you a guest tonight. He is the husband of one of our better halves on Fired Up, our conservative talk podcast. And what's great about having this individual on tonight is we are going to be talking about the perils of young QBs being rushed out on the field too quickly and then pulled too quickly, or maybe they aren't. But we're going to talk specifically about Bryce Young and that whole dilemma. And then we're going to talk about NIL. And this gentleman has a very rich background in football. So let me introduce to you Bill Ross. Bill, it's great. And to make it worse, people, he's good looking. I hate good looking men, man. Makes me feel bad. Yeah, Bill Ross, that's a husband of Annette. And y'all may not know, Annette has some issues, and Bill, God bless him, is a good husband. I'm an ex-sailor, Bill. There's a lot of ex-sailors, that you learn dude. So not only are you a good person, good wife, and it's good to have you on here. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, William, for having me on. Sports is a passion of mine in general. One of my old coaches asked a group of us in high school, "Why do you play the game?" And my simple answer was because I love it. And that was the right answer. So it is a passion of mine. I was a Division I athlete. I walked on, earned a scholarship. So I have a different view of this from my past back in the late 80s, but also have coached high school football, quarterback coach, offensive coordinator. So I see the world from a few different angles, and I'm looking forward to talking about with you tonight. I think there's a lot of things, with Bryce Young, and then also the NIL. We could go on for a long time tonight, but I'm really looking forward to discussing it with you and, joining you in the future. And I appreciate you having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. And to everybody, another thank you to Bill. He was a last minute addition. I think Annette was a little peeved when I told her, "What? I'm second choice?" So I don't say that purposely. I say that as gratitude and thank you, because it's not easy, people, to jump on a podcast because everybody wants to give their opinion, and then after 30 seconds run through, they're done, and they're like, "Oh, what else can I say?" So thank you for that too. So we are going to talk about Bryce Young, the benching of Bryce Young by the Carolina Panthers. That sparked the same conversation that always comes up about the development of young quarterbacks in the NFL. And it's funny, I got rushing young QBs, and I'm thinking fantasy, rushing quarterbacks, but I'm referring to rushing quarterbacks onto the field before they may be ready. And there's reasons for that. And what people don't understand, the biggest reason, at least in my opinion, is the financial pressures. Not as big. I mean, Bill could probably tell you better than I. I don't know about that one. I did fantasy numbers. The enormous pressure before they had the rookie salary cap to get these guys on the playing field with the $60-90 million contracts of the day back then, that forced it. But even now, they're forced. And part of the reason I think, Bill, is because they can build a team around a rookie or a young quarterback because they're on that rookie deal. Because once they show promise, that price gets jacked up. And we're going to talk about it, but it's these are contracts that are enormous, and they significantly impact the team's salary cap. And it creates this urgency to determine the player's potential. And as I said, on the rookie contract, they can build around him. What are your thoughts regarding being able to build quickly around a rookie quarterback to save money, to give contracts out to other people, as well as your initial thoughts before we get deeper into it? Are they rushed onto the field too quickly?
Well, I agree with you on the financial part of it. I mean, everything's about finance, right? Whether you like it or not, it is. And those contracts for the rookie quarterbacks coming out of college have, escalated to, a level I don't think anybody even predicted years ago. Right.
Right.
I think that, there's another issue that I'll bring up right now, and then we can get back to that, is as a fan, and you have your teams, you're invested, right? If you're a season ticket holder or whatever it might be, you're invested on TV, or you're buying into some package, streaming or whatever it is to watch your teams. The NFL has an issue, and the issue is this, in my opinion. You need room to have a good backup and pay that backup.
Right.
Because if you're going to give all your money to the starting quarterback, which is inevitably what they do, and it actually hurts the rest of the team too, in general, from a finance standpoint, right? The NFL needs to create a secondary position where the backup quarterback isn't on the cheap, but you actually get somebody that you can pay and they can play, because I think they owe it to the fan. If your starting quarterback gets hurt, your season shouldn't be over, right? I mean, that's the way I look at it. So, you go into game 3 with the San Diego, well, I call them the San Diego Chargers still, but the LA Chargers.
I know.
Yeah, and Herbert's hurt. You shouldn't think that your season's over, right? Because there are a lot of talented quarterbacks that could fit into a mix. But we could go over that. This is another segment probably talking about how to work some kind of special cap for quarterbacks, because it's the most important position on the field. And when you don't have someone behind them in some cases and they're not ready, your season's over. And then you have the ticket holder. I mean, you have a responsibility to the fan and the season ticket holder and the corporate tickets, because they keep the league going. Without the fan money, you have no TV money, right? So it all works together.
Exactly. In fact, the protecting that quarterback too is truly important, because how many Herbert fans are going to not only give up on the season, but they're going to stop watching, and that's not good. They need the fans to come out. It's a catch-22. We as fans get screwed, because as these prices escalate for these quarterbacks, they pass on the cost, not just to the tickets, but to the hot dog, the hamburger, the popcorn, the beer. I mean, I about 15 years ago, I remember reading for a family of 4. It was literally $400 to $600, to go enjoy a game with a family of 4, when you counted parking, ticket prices, etc. Maybe about 400, because tickets weren't quite at 100 a pop yet. But the way I'm describing it, you're not talking great seats. You're talking seats up in Nose Alley, So so let's talk about real quick about some of these players before we get to Bryce Young specifically. One of the most important things I realized, and you alluded to it, I think, for example, this past Monday night, the Cincinnati Bengals, they made the Washington Commanders look all world. And I'm like, that's because they're giving a big chunk of their salary cap to Burrows and Jamar Chase, and it wasn't that defense has always had problems, even though last year it was supposed to be a strength. It was a weakness. It looks like it's a weakness again. And that offensive line, once again, has Joe Burrows running for his life. And I think that's the downside. And we're going to get into that a bit. And I kind of jumped ahead. But real quick, let me give this thought. Then give me your thoughts on what I just said and the importance of team context, meaning a strong offensive line, a receiving core that can help accelerate development, a stable coaching staff, consistent systems, teams with a history of developing quarterbacks. I look at the Niners. And what I just told you, I look at the Niners as the epitome of what I just said: the strong O-line, the coaching staff, developing quarterbacks. And then I look at the Panthers when I think about what I described with the Bengals. You can also look at the Panthers' offensive line, defense is bad. They're just a bad team. What's your take from those two perspectives? And then I want to get into Bill Walsh, and then we'll talk about some of these quarterbacks specifically.
Well, I think it's very important on the team building part of it. You don't win in the NFL or at any level if people don't buy into the team, from the coaching staff and above, but to the players, right? And if that's the problem in the NFL right now with the cap. The quarterbacks are gobbling up, a large percentage of that dollar, and then you can't spend it elsewhere. So, if you don't have an offensive line to protect your quarterback that you're paying X amount to, you're losing before you even start, right? You need to, Harbaugh with the Chargers, was a big pickup from ND, because he starts with the offensive line, and then builds out from there. Now he went there with a quarterback already, but you need to have the team needs to be built with a fundamental belief that teams first, right? So, there are days, I don't know if you remember the time with, Dilfer in the Ravens, right?
Yep.
He was a prime example of a quarterback that didn't make many mistakes, and he facilitated the offense. He threw the ball when he had to. They had a great defense, and they ran the ball really well, right? So
Right.
it made him look even better. But the team on both sides of the ball, they were phenomenal. And then they beat the Giants in the Super Bowl and embarrassed them actually overall because Dilfer
Yes, they
actually
did.
could play. I mean, he could make throws and stretch the defense too at the same time, which some people, didn't expect or didn't think he could do consistently, but he could. So in other words, you got a guy like Stafford with the Rams who redoes his contract to allow more funds to other positions because they know that. I mean, look, if you're playing for just the paycheck, do you really love the game? I think you
Nope.
love it, but you might not love it enough.
You don't
And
have
so,
what you said, the
yeah,
passion. You don't have the
yes,
passion, as you said.
no, and you need the passion in football because when the chips are down, you got to dig down deep to, at quarterback, lead the team. You might have a frustrating night. Your line might not be blocking. Your receivers might be dropping. The defense might be, having a bad night. They can't get a turnover. They can't stop the opposing team, whatever it might be. So you're paying for that too, right? You need to be a leader. And there are a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, past and present, who aren't leaders like that, right? When you're paying the big
Right.
dollars, it's not about throwing the ball around the field only. It's about leading. It's about reading the defense. It's about not making mistakes. And I think part of the problem with running these guys in early is they don't get a chance to develop and get used to the speed of the game, reading defenses. When you're in college, it's a completely different game than the pros, right? You have to read
Right.
defenses, make adjustments, and a lot of first year quarterbacks, the best, can't execute that. And if you put them
That's
in
right.
too early, like take Sam Darnold for a second, right, with the Jets, terrible team, talented guy from San Clemente at SC, and then goes to the Jets, top draft pick, just has a horrible time. Now he's all of a sudden with Minnesota, he's got a second coming in his career. Now we'll see if it continues to pan out, but he looks like a totally different quarterback than he did with the Jets because you have a team that he's playing for. They have receivers, they have a line, they have a defense. So he can actually just be himself and take some of the experiences that he had with the Jets and things that he's learned and put it into this pot that now he has with the Vikings, and he's a totally different quarterback. And coaches make a huge difference too. Not only the head coach, but the quarterback coach and offensive coordinator, the whole deal. So
Exactly. So it's funny you said about Elvis Gerback. Maybe it was last week's podcast, or maybe it was off camera, but somebody cracked on not Gerback, but Dilfer, and somebody
yes,
cracked on Dilfer, and I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I go, there's a reason Ray Lewis publicly and goes way over the top to praise him because he loves him.
yes,
Because I was like, I did a lot of research. I did research like a scout, and I was like, Elvis Gerback built his resume off of X amount of big games, bad teams, and those numbers were inflated, and
yeah,
they won those games. And it was a time the Chiefs were doing pretty well, and I think it was there for 1 year as a starter, maybe a couple, and he went to the Ravens. And was like, this is not going to end well, and. Dilfer knew his role. Dilfer was
yes,
realized, he wasn't the quarterback. He was at Fresno State or Fresno.
yeah.
I can't
Fresno
remember which
State,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Fresno State, and he knew his role, and they loved
Mm-hmm.
him for that. My role, he had like a Terry Bradshaw role for old school people. Read the defense, understand what's happening, don't lose the game, make the plays when you have to your
Yep,
receivers, and let
yep.
the defense do its job. And so that's great. And the other thing I wanted to point out is reaching deep down. Boxing, MMA, basketball, football, and tennis. Those are sports you have to reach down because
Mhm.
you are physically exhausted. It's why when people tell me golf is like bowling. Technically, they may be sports, but they're not. They're digging deep. It's more cerebral.
Yes,
It's not.
right.
You are not in the trenches, getting pounded, haven't taken a hit as a quarterback. As a lineman. Just your body, the physical beating. You truly have to reach down, and I think coaching and mentoring and having strong leadership helps with that. And I think the Niners have that. I think every team has a capability. You don't become an NFL player without being an elite player. You may be on a crappy NFL team, but you are still one of the best 300 NFL or football athletes in the country, in
Right.
terms of the league makeup. But let's talk about here real quick coaching. Let's talk about a man who is seen as a legend. And this is what the passage of time always depresses me. If you tell a young kid growing up today, hey, what do you think of Bill Walsh? Who? And Bill Walsh is a guy who developed the West Coast offense. He kind of borrowed a lot of aspects from Don Coryell and Sid Gilliam, I think, if I remember correctly. But
Yep.
his ability was able to read a talent. And he sat there and again, credited with developing the West Coast offense. Some of his quarterbacks, Ken Anderson, and people, you may not know Ken Anderson because he didn't win a Super Bowl, but he was the man on very, very bad Cincinnati teams,
Yep.
And then there was also Dan Fouts, who y'all may know as an announcer, who today would be shattering records the way they have built the league around quarterbacks.
Mhm.
Bill Walsh said that a quote, if a passer has not shown marked improvement and at least become a divisional playoff caliber quarterback by his third year, he probably never will. In today's game, that translates about 20 some odd games.
Right.
What he said to the audience, what he's saying is about 20 some odd games, 22, 23, if I remember correctly, what Steve Young said, he said, if you have an NFL quarterback. What are your thoughts on that? I'm a believer of that. Please don't agree just because I agree. You're being the
Oh,
guest. If you disagree, what are your thoughts on that?
well, one point I'd like to make is back to the Dilfer example is on all championship teams in any sport, right? Hockey's another one of my favorites. But in any sport, you have players that are willing to take on roles
Right.
to win. And then other players have bigger roles, whether it's the smallest role to the largest role. And those are the championship teams, right? In that they build around that. And that's where, San Francisco did that. Walsh, they all bought into his, West Coast offense. And I agree with him about, quarterbacks because and this is why I believe we're bringing some along too fast, because you don't give them the chance to catch up to the speed of the game effectively enough to read and study film and then execute it on the field, right? And if you have a young guy who's, let's say they sign him for $250 million and he starts to lose his confidence, it's hard for him to get it back, but he's just had a guarantee of, let's say, 190 of the 250s guaranteed, right?
Right.
So he has that 190 guaranteed, and now he has to find his confidence to actually go out and play that game. And he doesn't know how to study film the right way because the game's so different than college. He might not have put a lot of time into film in college, and now he has to because, this is the league of all leagues, right? From a speed standpoint and the way the game changes. So I agree with that. And I feel like, somebody like Young might have just got thrown into the fire too soon. He's short. He throws on his toes. So thus, I think his arm strength suffers in the NFL where it might not have suffered as much in college. And if you can hold them out for a year or two, I think it really helps. Now, the problem is they're making so much money. How can you keep somebody on the bench when it's affecting the rest of the team on a dollar, the finance situation? So they almost are forced to put them in because the fans want to see them, and it's exciting. But it takes a lot of discipline as a head coach to know exactly where that player is and build around him so that he's successful. I mean, you want your quarterback to be successful because your team without a quarterback isn't going to be successful, especially in this day and age. And you need to know how to build that quarterback and build confidence and then call the right plays, put him in a position to be successful. It might not be sexy, but it might work, and so a lot of that is not done. I mean, one of my favorite coaches used to say, hey, it doesn't matter if a coach is making or a player is making $10 million, $15 million a year. They still need to be coached, and they might not be the sharpest tool in the shed. So, I mean, they all need each other. It doesn't matter what they're making, because when you get on the field, it doesn't matter what you have in your bank account. It's how you execute.
Right. For people out there, Bill Walsh did win 3 Super Bowls, and I truly believe in my heart, if Joe Montana had not gone to the 49ers, we would not know who Joe Montana is today. I think he was the perfect quarterback for the West Coast system. I think any other system, he's just average arm strength, but he was very intellectual. He had ice in his veins. He was like Michael Jordan. That final drive, in fact, his first Super Bowl, don't quote me if I'm wrong here, but I think it was against the Bengals. That final drive, ice in his veins. The Bengals are winning. The pressure's on. Bam, bam, bam. And I wasn't a 49ers fan, so I'm screaming at the TV, no. And then everybody thinks Jerry Rice. No, it was John Taylor.
Yeah, the little slant pass. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not sure, but I want to say that this picture is from that Super Bowl, but I don't know. But it's from the 80s, I think, if I remember.
But it looks good.
Yeah. But that said, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, William, I was a Giants I'm a Rams fan and Giants fan, and I hated the 49ers because if you're a Giants fan back in the day, they battled each other and had a great rivalry, each one trying to get past each other to get to the Super Bowl, right? And some amazing games. But his West Coast offense and the way they turned the passing game into a running game as well, not just vertically but horizontally, was amazing. And BYU was doing that too. Like, in the Western Athletic Conference, I will now tell you that I played for Texas El Paso, and we did play in the Western Athletic Conference. But the whole deal was, a pass is as good as a run. A short passing horizontally and vertically slants and whatnot. It's like a run. So Montana was perfect for that because you could take a quarterback who doesn't have the best arm strength, but he has smarts.
Right, exactly.
And can read a defense. And, I would say Tom Brady's the next level of that because he doesn't have the strongest arm in the NFL. Now he's out of the NFL, but he didn't have the strongest arm, but he was as smart as you can get on the field. He knew how to read a defense. He was very fast in processing all that information. And when you get quick slot guys and then you have the vertical guys, and you have a quarterback like that, the system fits. And you could actually probably say the same thing about Tom Brady as you said about Joe Montana. He found the right place at the right time with the right coaches and the right system that made him extremely successful. Now, he still needs to make the play. So I'm not trying to take away from the fact that he's won 7 Super Bowls. But he found the right place at the right time, and they both worked together, and they created a dynasty all the way till the end. And that's also part of
that.
What's that?
I just told my wife, I said, there's only one Michael Jordan. You could go anywhere in the world, and I have. And I said, do you know Michael Jordan? And they know. And because she was talking about Tom Brady, I go, Tom Brady is the GOAT, at least for this generation. I go, but there's only one Michael Jordan because Michael Jordan came into the league after Magic and Bird saved the league because nobody was watching basketball. So it was like a rebirth. Right. He was early, and his name just became synonymous. I go, Tom Brady's coming in, and it's already legendary, the league, the players. I go, but it's those 7 Super Bowls. It's why he will linger much longer than most literally any other quarterback. But you're right. I do agree with that. And let's move on here to real quick, though, to I was going to make a comment and I just forgot. Damn it. Can't be doing that.
William, let me say one thing to you. Like, I appreciate I don't care if I'm the 3rd or 4th call to be on your show. So call me anytime because That's exactly what sports is, right? When you get the opportunity, you need to be able to take advantage of it and excel,
Yes,
further your success in whatever league you're in or whatever you're doing, right? I mean, and it could be
exactly.
something out of sports, but I appreciate you having me tonight, because if Tom Brady wasn't a backup for Bledsoe, when Bledsoe got hurt, Tom Brady might not ever been Tom Brady.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, can you imagine Tom Brady with Patrick Mahomes' gunslinger skills? But then, it's easy to say that, but then he may not have lasted as long because it was his own uniqueness. Because I think what reminds me about Tom Brady with Joe Montana is they both had ice in their veins. But see, I never saw the difference. Somebody asked me, who would you have, Tom Brady or Joe Montana? I go, I've seen them both in crunch time, you know, and Joe Montana never failed in crunch time. Tom Brady, I go, the difference though is Tom Brady was there 7 times or 10 times, won 7 times, but it's a consummate team game. The game is built to protect quarterbacks more. Defenses are now hindered compared to Joe Montana's era.
Mm-hmm.
As Terry Bradshaw said, quarterbacks wear skirts, not literally, but when you compare
Yes.
the eras, So I
Yeah.
would still rather have Joe Montana. There was something scary about giving Joe. It's like when they play the Giants, I'm like, they're done. To me, Tom Brady was not somebody who you could give the ball with a minute left in the game and you knew he was going to drive it down. With Joe
Right.
Montana, you gave it to him. And since I didn't care for the 49ers outside of the Cowboys, they were the ones who I hated the
Right.
most. But the 49ers, I'm like, we're screwed, because that's what Montana embodied. And people aren't going to believe me because they never saw him play. They never saw that era. That's the downside of the passage of time. Because, honestly, I'd love to have seen Y.A. Tittle play. If I remember,
Right.
or one of those guys who won like 8 championships. They didn't have the Super Bowl back then, but every era has their down. Or Jim Brown. Watching Jim Brown, he's a legendary player too. So let's get here to talk about some examples in terms of the finances. And when we talk finances, we're not necessarily talking to rookie quarterbacks or young quarterbacks, because financially now there's a rookie cap and they can build around them. But in the old days, it used to be, when I say old days, I'm talking maybe just 10, 15 years ago. Your contract was based on winning Super Bowls. But what's
Mm-hmm.
happened since then, Patrick Mahomes gets a 10-year, $450 million deal. He's got a couple of Super Bowls under his belt at that point in time. Yet agents go, no, that's the new baseline. So then you get Joe Burrow, who deserves his because he took his team to the Super Bowl. And I actually think
Right.
the coach cost him the Super Bowl. But he got
Yeah.
a 5-year, $275 million. To me, they're two different quarterbacks, both successful, but it shows how crazy the money's getting. So what
Yes.
happens is players who show talent finish up with their rookie contract, the team has a tough decision to make. And some bust. So I gave you 2 names that have been successful: Mahomes and Burrows. Big fat contracts, one proven winner. The other one has taken their team at least to the big dance. Nobody can deny the quality of player they are. But then you have the other side of the coin. Deshaun Watson, uh, 5-year guaranteed, the only fully guaranteed contract in the NFL, $230 million. Russell Wilson. I have to make this note. He was like a 10 or 12-year Pro Bowler, two or three Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowls, at least I know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 Super Bowls, and destroyed Peyton Manning. So I'm calling him a bust because I'm referring to the recent contract of 5 years, $245 million that he signed a couple years ago. He's already past his prime. Great agent is my take. Then there's
Yes.
Carson Wentz, and then there's one we forget that kind of really epitomizes it. Brock Osweiler, 4-year contract, $72 million. Now, this was back in 2016, where
Mm-hmm.
that was monster money back then, which shows how quickly these contracts, in my eyes, have spiraled out of control. So the question I have for you, we comment on the fact one's a Super Bowl winner, the other one took their team to the Super Bowl from the successful standpoint. But then you have teams that I feel were forced to acquiesce to potential and giving monster money. And I'd say they were forced to acquiesce, meaning they were unproven quarterbacks. They hadn't won
Mm-hmm.
anything, but they had showed
Right.
flashes of talent. What's your thought on that? The structure of the NFL being forced to look at the quarterback position that way, meaning he may not have won anything, but we're kind of forced to pay him. You agree or disagree, or do you think a team should start holding their ground?
Well, I mean, if so that's interesting. If teams hold their ground, people are going to start saying collusion, right? So I mean, it's like the deal with oh boy, what's his name? For 49ers, he sued the league a couple times. He never got Kaepernick, right? So, in general, to try to control salary. But I think there's something called FOMO, fear of missing out in trading and whatnot, right? And I think what happens is the teams and the upper office sometimes have that, right? That like if we don't sign him and we don't pay him, but he goes somewhere else and he does well, we look bad, right? So if
their
they
jobs, they don't want to lose their jobs.
Well, exactly, right? And so it's a difficult topic because it goes all the way to the top to the bottom as far as the club is concerned, right? Because you have GMs that need to make the right decisions. You have people underneath them on the assistant GM side and scouts and all of this, right? And I believe sometimes they see someone in college who's really good, or he's had one decent year in the NFL, and then he's out to be signed, and they sign them, and they don't put a lot of thought into it from a sense that, is there another guy that is more proven, right, out there that maybe we don't pay as much, but he fits into our system better. He's just not a marketing tool, right, for the team,
right,
and in a quarterback and so forth. So it's a very fine line that you walk with that, I believe, because there are quarterbacks that wouldn't have fit in for the Baltimore. I'm going to go back to Trent Dilfer, that might have been sexier than Trent Dilfer, but they wouldn't have won with him like they did with Trent Dilfer because he was accepting his role and whatnot. And they might have paid the other guy more than Trent or whatever the case may be. But so I really think they have to think a little bit harder on why they're offering somebody the contract. What can that guy provide the team? Because, leadership and the intangibles are really important, right, when it comes to that. And most fans don't look at the intangibles. They just look at, what did the guy do in college? He can throw the ball 70 yards, great, right, and whatnot. But they don't look at the entire package. And then I think some GMs and some offices, they get caught up in that. And then they're offering people too much money. They haven't proven it. I think you should prove your worth before you get it, right? I have a few people in baseball, for instance, who their contracts are all guaranteed, right?
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I love about football. It's the only sport where the contract's not guaranteed.
Yeah, and that's the deal. Like, you have a part of it that's guaranteed, but it's not. Baseball is the best union that there is. But the problem is, I do know a couple people from the inside, and they play hard, and then they get the contract. And a group of those people, they don't play hard after they get the contract, right? So they're just there. So they're there to ride
as a data guy.
What's that?
As a data guy, I used to track that. And I used to joke to my team in the office, it's a contract year. Statistically speaking, the data shows these guys have some of their best careers in the contract. I go, that's where you learn who loves the game and who's playing for the contract. Because immediately after that, you'll see a lot of these players, their numbers take a drop down, after they get that big fat contract. Okay, so let's talk about Bryce Young specifically.
Sure.
And you're an ex-player here. Played at college. Sports is your life in that sense. I was always too small to play. One quick, I apologize. I wanted to comment on what you said. I have always believed in culture. The 49ers have a system in place, good coaching. They have schemes. They have a framework. I remember the 80s, the West Coast system. They would not always go after the best player. They would go after the player that fit their system. And I think, and one thing I saw, and being a data guy, starting a sports company, we specialized in fantasy, but it was all about data, studying film. I started, and I'm a human nature guy, meaning I'm a political guy, but I'm not bound by my ideology. My reactions and analysis come based off of human nature. And come draft time, I was always shocked how the most intelligent guy in that general manager's office would be like a kid with the nerves, getting nervous, doesn't want to miss out. And they buy into the hype. And it's like they forget the kid has done on the field or what that free agent has actually not accomplished. They just start buying into the hype and they toss common sense out the window. And I think that train of thought has dominated the league. And not just the players, but how many whiz kid coaches. Man, you see that offensive bill? Yeah, but he had Matthew Stafford with Odell Beckham and a couple of other great receivers, or did you see what he did? Yeah, he had Joe Burrows. I mean, what's Zach Taylor done since that one Super Bowl? He's kind of disappointed as a head coach, including, So my whole point is I think if they went back to what you said, you got to prove it. If not, we're going to build around the team. Why are you sitting, rookie? Because we're building the team first. I don't need you. Like Drake May, I think it's a smart decision to sit him. I would sit him for the whole year, not because he's not good enough to start. That's a big investment we're going to make. I don't need you getting sacked 62 times like David Carr and get phantom feet for the rest of your career. So I think we've lost focus. It was shocking. I'd go to the Senior Bowl. You hear great common sense from the head coaches. Then come draft day, I'm like, well, they said this about that guy. Now they're kind of like ignoring everything they said and falling in line. And then you have the owners who don't go to any of these events. And and before I go to Bryce Young, give me your quick thought on my belief. My thought or my take is, how the hell does that guy become a billionaire in the business world and then is a moron as an NFL owner? I mean, and you can look at various franchises, the Browns, the Dolphins, before they got Mike McDaniel. I mean, it's like, how are you so successful here and you're a moron here? Or it's like the Carolina Panthers owner, Bill Tepper, I think his name is, or Tepper, I can't remember, David Tepper, I can't remember, but he's always meddling. I'm not saying I'm right. That's just the feeling I get. What's your take?
Well, I mean, it does. So the owners aren't necessarily football guys, right? I mean, a great football family, the Maras, Giants, Rooney's, the Steelers, and they built that along the way, right? And it's in their gene, like the gene pool in the family is football and ownership, right? They learn along the way before they get put into positions, that they're not ready for. Right? They don't run football operations until they're ready, right? But a lot of these owners, they've been really wildly successful, not to take anything away from that, in different industries. And they just quite frankly don't know anything about football, but it's fun to own a team. And I say fun because the dollars to own a team are so high that, there needs to be a little bit of fun there for them because it's a different business. And then they need to hire people to run that business for them. And a lot of these guys aren't used to not running the business or being involved heavily in the business, right? And they just might not know what they're doing and they can't step back. So they buy in to, as you said, talent that might not be talented enough or is sexy, and they want the sexy over the, other player who actually will get them more wins. But quite frankly, it's because they don't know enough about the game sports. Some of them have been on team sports. Some of them haven't been. But because you've made billions of dollars, doing X, Y, Z, doesn't mean you can buy a team and that team's just going to magically be successful because you've been successful in other things. I mean, have you ever heard the term, if you have a blueprint, a lot of successful business people do this. They have a blueprint. They use it once, it works. They use it again and again and again and again, and it keeps working within their wheelhouse, right? But that doesn't mean that blueprint's going to work for running an NFL football team.
Right. No, you're right. And that's my take too. At the end of the day, these guys aren't football people, yet they meddle. It's like Haslam. He's the one who gave the decision and made the push to give him the guaranteed contract. We got a winner here. I'm like, do you really? So let's talk about Bryce Young here quickly. Sure. My take on Bryce Young, 5'10", 204 pounds. To me, he's undersized. 2, he played at Alabama, a powerhouse where every player is a man amongst boys.
Yes.
3, he only played 2 years. People forget that. Having that offensive line. I mean, the numbers he put up, to me, it's not that he didn't have the talent. It's like, you have the best of the best of the best at every position, every level. So to me, it's like we don't really know what we're getting out of him. And I
Right.
based that on his size. And then we also had Matt Jones, the kid who the
Yep.
Bengals drafted, who ended up I can't remember his name. There's a whole series of Alabama
Yes.
quarterbacks that have come in the NFL but not been stars because
Right.
it's Alabama. So
Yep.
that's what I saw in Bryce Young. You gave some technicalities in terms of his footwork because as a fan, I'm like, I question his arm strength again because of his size. But most importantly, what big powerhouse colleges hide and protect their quarterbacks from is they're men amongst boys. So when they come
Yeah.
into the NFL, they don't understand the speed of the game. So when I
Right.
see Bryce Young out there, I'm like, he seems he doesn't seem to go through his reads fast enough. He seems to be a little slow. He has enough arm strength to play within the system. I don't think his size, and I don't think he's adapting to the speed of the game because there's one player that came out last week, and he didn't say who it was. A reporter came out and said, dude, he's making the same mistakes, and he looks like the same kid from last season, early in the season. It's like
Yeah.
he's not improving. And to me, and I don't know if I'm right, so correct me, but to me, that it's like he's not adapting. He just can't wrap himself around the speed of the game. He's not able to adapt to that. That's what I see with him. That's my take. But the added question is that I want you to answer: was he benched too soon? And can he recover and come back and be an NFL starter?
Well, I think anybody who has the talent, if they're willing to put the work in on and off the field, can come back, right? And also in the right situation, right coaches, right system, right? I believe they can come back. I do believe, and I believe it's the right decision to bench him because he's had enough time. And he seems to be like a deer in headlights at times. Very talented player. So I'm not getting to the point where like he's not a talented guy. He is. Doesn't mean the system is right for him. Doesn't mean the coaches are right for him. But that's where he is right now, right? And that's where they are. So there's a Adam Thielen was frustrated with him last week, I believe. And you could see it, right? Where he's not coming off to the second read. There's open receivers that he's not staying with. So, and this might not
Phil,
be.
let me interject. Let me interject. That's what I'm talking about, the speed of the game. Meaning Thielen was open. And the speed of the game to me, that's where it's too fast for him. He's still looking for his first read when he should have already. And it's easy for me to say this. I'm too smart to never play the game. But I'm like putting my scouts hat on. That's what I saw. I'm like, okay, he wasn't fast enough to come off his first read and go to his second read or third read. I don't remember if Thielen was the second or third read.
I think it was the second read. That
But that's what I so that's what I see. You're the guy who played the game. So am I looking? I mean, educate me and educate the audience. Am I looking at it wrong?
No, I agree with that. I think another thing is I haven't seen him throw from a lot of different arm angles. And when you're 5'10", you need to be able to deliver the ball from, underside, over the top, wherever it might be. And I haven't seen him, do that. I do agree with the Alabama point you made. And this is where I don't understand scouts in the back office. He's 5'10", 205. He's playing for Alabama. No one's going to put pressure on him consistently, right? So he's going to be able to make throws. He's going to be able to check down. He's going to be able to make mistakes that don't hurt him at the college level, so to speak, right? And the fact that they can't compile enough information from that school. Like I would even say Ohio State has had a lot of disappointments too. Another major winner. And they've had their share of disappointments in the NFL from quarterback as well, right? So, a lot of that. What's that?
Every fan's gonna go, shut up, man. What about CJ Stroud? I mean, you're right. But that's what every fan's gonna say.
CJ, that guy, my personal feeling about him is they have a chance to run quite a ways this year. And build off, what they did last year, right? But so they don't take a look at the overall environment that the kid has. And then also, if you're in a program like that, you're learning what you need to do within that system, right? But then you get to another system and you might need to study more. You might need to look at more film. Things don't come as easy. The game's faster as it is from. So I think it's smart to take him out, let him learn. You still have an investment that it's not bad at this point. You just need to teach a little bit more and give him some more time. So I wouldn't give up on him, but I do think it's the right thing to pull him, because every game where he has, no success and has mistakes and makes the same mistake more than once, that's the biggest thing, is he's making the same mistakes over and over again. And you just can't do that, right? Especially at that level. You can in college with Alabama and get away with it and keep rolling, right? But you can't in the NFL. So I say protect your investment, pull him aside, work with him. He has to be willing to put the extra time in, though. So, it's not just the team and the organization. He needs to be willing to do that too, because every week that he goes out there and he doesn't improve, he's going backwards, and it's harder to get him out of the hole. So I think it's a good move to take him out, but do it in a positive way where you're going to teach and he's going to learn and develop at the same time.
Let me ask you this, though. I mean, he's a veteran, but this is, new team, new offense. Andy Dalton came in and ran that team like a pro. Now, granted, 10 plus years in the league, he was if I remember correctly, first rounder, took the Bengals to the playoffs 5 times. So he's no slouch. But he came in and did everything he needed to do to win. And more importantly, what we haven't talked about real quick is the locker room. What Andy Dalton did was he kept that locker room together. And what I'm trying to explain to the audience, as I did play sports, football was my favorite one. So I was kind of bummed I could never play that once once everybody hit puberty, But there's the locker room. I don't know, the locker room presence. And I believe part of the reason they pulled him is there's 2 reasons Dave Canales pulled him. His job, Dave Canales' job, and to that locker room. The Grumblings were coming out. That one reporter saying, kid hasn't improved. He's the same quarterback. I think he was losing that locker room. So I'm going to give you the last word, but being optimistic, he needs to go to a team built like the Niners, because I view him as the black Brock Purdy, meaning Brock Purdy doesn't have a strong arm, isn't the biggest guy, but he's in the perfect system that knew how to nurture him, knew how to play to his strengths, and said, Brock, and Brock's strength is, people don't understand about the West Coast offense. Steve Young once said it. Well, yeah, they criticized my deep ball. Well, my deep ball is 20 yards, and I hit Jerry Rice in stride, and they don't catch Jerry. And people don't understand. Even Kyle Shanahan said, my quarterback has to be able to hit the spot where the ball's supposed to go. Accuracy is number 1. And so I view Bryce Young, if he's because I don't know if he's that accurate, but I think a San Francisco 49er environment is the best for him. I don't think he has the physical skills, and I think the game is too fast. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying that's what I've seen from him so far. And if I'm Dave Canales and Andy Dalton's winning and that locker room's coming together, because head coaching jobs do not come yearly for these guys. And if you go down quickly, you may never get another opportunity. So I'll give you the last word on Bryce Young, but real quick, also give me your thoughts on, is Frank Reich having the last laugh? Because remember, he wanted C.J. Stroud, 6'3", 220 pounds, and they went with Bryce Young, 5'10", 200 pounds,
Well, first of all, I'd love to hear the conversation of how they came up with that decision, right? Wouldn't you love to be in the room? You've got 2 very talented players. Programs are top-notch, right? So you have it. It's not like one is. You're not talking about a Division III quarterback, or someone like. Purdy. Where'd he come from? Like, he came out of nowhere, last pick, and now look what he's doing. But I would have loved to have heard the people that were saying, I like this one, I like that one. Frank Reich. To me, that's that's an easy decision. But you can see how people have their thoughts and their beliefs. And there's guys that they'll go Alabama no matter what. Like Alabama that's my first choice. Doesn't matter what position it is, just because of the college and Saban and all of that, right?
Right.
I think he needs to get outside and use his legs a little bit more. I think they need to put him in a position to have early success. That might be with a different program, a different team, different system, right?
I agree.
And
I
the thing
agree.
with Dalton, there's something to be said about knowing how to be a pro, right? And knowing how to be a pro is how to be on the field, off the field, in the locker room, right? Making the right decisions, taking care of the football. The ball's turned over way too much. Young turns the ball over a lot, and that just doesn't go. I mean, if you're making mistakes and you're missing people, but it's not the turnovers kill you, right? Especially in this league. So he was doing that way too much as well. So maybe it's a different team, but I wouldn't give up on him yet if I were the Panthers, because you put the money in, you have an investment, and
Oh
I
my
think
gosh. You're right. We haven't talked about it. And we're not going to talk about it. We're going to move on here. But I apologize for cutting you off like that. It's just you made me realize, what was it, like 4 first-round draft picks they gave up for the kid? I mean, you're right. I completely, we didn't even talk about that. But that's what makes this even worse. Real quick, CJ Stroud was exposed a little last week. I think you're going to start seeing a lot of teams doing a lot of blitzing on it moving forward. I believe in CJ Stroud, but I also think we're jumping the gun too quickly, assuming there's a lot of film on him. I think the Vikings and Brian Flores' blitzing style defense, a lot of teams are going to replicate this. So I think this is a great growing experience that the Texans are going to have, meaning they may lose a few games that people think they should win, but I think it's going to be a great growing experience for Stroud because he hasn't seen teams that blitz a lot. A comment on that, and then I want to move to Sam Darnold.
So no, I agree with that. I think that what they're going to do is they're going to go on the tape and they're going to start adjusting their side adjustments for blitzes, what routes they're running, where they're going to focus on going with the ball. So I have no doubt that they'll rework that offense a little bit to counter what other defenses might do based on the Vikings' success, right? So
I agree.
And he's talented. Yeah. So getting rid of the ball quick is so important, especially when there's pressure. And
that number 3 receiver is going to be important. That slot receiver is going to see some time here. But you're right. So let's move on to Sam Darnold quickly, and then we'll move on to Justin Fields. 2 quarterbacks, change of scenery. You mentioned Sam Darnold before. I personally believe the New York Jets is where quarterbacks go to die. They have not developed the quarterback. Even Joe Namath was not a great quarterback. He just wagged the finger number 1 and won a Super Bowl and lived the rest of his career off that. And God bless him for that. He has been immortalized. But the Jets, I can't remember the last great quarterback. I mean, Richard Todd was a nice quarterback. Brian, something I can't remember, was a nice quarterback. Chad Pennington, nice quarterback. No superstars, no quarterback to take him to the promised land. They go there to die. Look at the last Brigham Young quarterback, the one with Denver now. Sam Darnold. Then he went to Carolina, a team that had a head coach from Baylor who literally ran the run and shoot there with Robert Griffin to make his career, an offense that no longer works in the NFL. So to me, he went there, another setup to fail. And when he went to the 49ers, I was like, okay, he's not going to start. But God bless him because he's finally in a system where he can sit back and actually learn,
Right.
And my point is I always had faith. I was like, no, Sam Darnold is one of these quarterbacks that got screwed by going to a crappy team, getting traded to another crappy team. He just needs an opportunity. So everything he's done this year, I do toot myself because I am not shocked. This is a Sam Darnold I knew we could get it in the NFL. Now, Justin Fields, to me, he goes back to your statement on Ohio State quarterbacks. A lot of issues. The guy, he has a freaking arm, and when he gets accurate on a deep ball, you're like, oh my God. The problem is people take those highlight plays and kind of assume he's better than he really is. Right now, the Steelers are winning, not despite him, because he's playing smart football, but he's not winning for them. So you have 2 quarterbacks who have breathed new lives into the careers, but looking between the lines, I see the real Sam Darnold. I don't know what I still see in Justin Fields, but the point is both quarterbacks were destroyed by their original teams and being thrown out too soon, being given too much expectations on teams that have bad cultures. What's your take on these two guys?
Well, if you were to ask me which one I would take first, it would be Darnold, because I feel like, now the Jets have Aaron Rodgers, the oldest quarterback, so they don't go to die. Maybe he's dying already, but he's there, and I am rooting for him because I'd love to see him turn something around. But
who's that?
What's that?
Who's
Rodgers.
that?
Aaron Rodgers.
Oh yeah. Aaron Rodgers. No, you're right.
Really old guy, and we'll see what happens. But so I would, Sam Darnold, the coaching staff, and the team and the players, it seems to fit, and I see him doing really well within that system. Just Fields, I'll tell you, I was disappointed with the Bears, even with the system or whatever they were doing and the players they had. He made mistakes, same mistakes over and over again at times. I believe his record before they beat the Chargers last week was 6-27 or something like that. So now he's 7-27. And the announcer kept saying, well, he's 6-2 in his last 8 games. Well, I mean, that means nothing to me because, there are other losses in that bunch, right?
Right. Let me push back. Push back a little bit because so last year was my first year re-entering the NFL as a data guy. Yeah. And I'm an arrogant, excuse my French, I'm an arrogant prick because I was good at analyzing data, but I was even better at determining the heart, the value, like digging deep. That's why I brought the comment up. And I noticed during that stretch where he was 6-2, they went to the rushing attack. They put the focal point on their rushing attack, but it helped him. It gave him more time to read the field. It gave him that breathing room, that confidence. So I'm not pushing back in terms of his talent per se and what you said, as much as it looked like the team realized, let's not put it on his shoulders like we did for the first, 10 games, and let's actually put it on the rushing attack. And so when they traded him, I'm like, man, you finally figured out the formula, but you're dumping him because you're falling in love with Caleb Williams, Now, in their defense, they did take the Panthers to the cleaners, I just wanted to push back. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But your point's well taken. I mean, and that's the thing. I don't think he's the kind of quarterback that wins games himself. Okay, that it Fields. I don't think so. Most quarterbacks don't win the game themselves, right? And my question with him is, and I don't know him, never met him, is what's up here? Not only
yes,
smarts in reading the field, but also desire. Because there were times with the Bears where I didn't think he I didn't think he cared just by his demeanor on the sideline, and that's important too. So those are things, intangibles that I don't know about him, but I would question. And Sam Darnold to me seems to read the field better. Even when I don't think he's going to win games just on his own either. Everybody needs a team, but I feel like he can make plays that maybe Fields can't make. And this is where you get into the running quarterback in college. Fields could get himself out of trouble using his legs, right? Sam Darnold, not as much, right? So
but he's athletic enough.
What's that?
He's athletic enough to move around in the pocket and buy yards. Yeah. He's shown that some, but you're right. I get what you're saying. So real quick on Fields, you hit it on the head. And like I said, last year was my first year back in the league and looking and analyzing literally every game, watching film. And I don't have a room. I'm talking about on NFL.com, just like any other fan. But I saw that from him. I'm like, this is an arrogant kid. Yeah. He's a kid that doesn't seem to want to study to better himself. He seems to want to rely on his talent. And this is what I tell people about rushing quarterbacks. The quarterback position traditionally is a drop back. You make your reads, you make your pass. That's what separates Lamar Jackson from great quarterbacks. He can look great, MVP quality in the regular season. He crumbles in the playoffs because you're not facing average NFL teams. You're facing the best of the best in the playoffs, and you have to eventually throw the ball. I thought his 2 passes in the Monday night opener or Sunday night opener against the Chiefs epitomized how badly they were in the accuracy. These rushing quarterbacks, Michael Vick's another one. Randall Cunningham developed into a great pocket quarterback his final 4 years. Why? He had that devastating knee injury, could no longer run like he used to. That's the problem I see with Justin Fields. I'll give you the last word on Darnold and Fields. Do you see Darnold with the ability to take this team into the playoffs and deep? And because that's what I see, but I have no clue what to make. I don't even know if Justin Fields will finish the season as a starter. What are your two takes on these two guys before we move on?
Well, Darnold, obviously not knowing injuries to players and how the season plays out, because football is all about surviving and the tenacity of the team and replacing and someone stepping up, right, if there's an injury or whatnot, whatever the case may be. So to me, they look like, right now they look like a solid playoff team. I don't know how far he will go in the playoffs. He needs to stay within what he's doing now. What happens sometimes is as the season progresses with success, they start to expand out of what they were doing when they were winning, and their decision-making is different, and they get a little, lackluster out of the box and not as disciplined. So he's got to stay within his wheelhouse too, right? But I could see him doing that. Fields, you've got Wilson on the bench. I don't know how those two get along, but I'm going to guess maybe not great, because I've heard – things about Russell Wilson with Denver wanting his own office and reviewing film. And so that's a no-go on a team. That doesn't work. And it didn't work with the Broncos. He got away with it, I guess, or it developed with Seattle, and then it, went on to Denver. But so, how well do they get along? Are they going to work with each other? Is he going to help Fields, get better? Russell Wilson, I don't think is going to take Pittsburgh anywhere. So I would stay with, Fields just from an athletic standpoint, right? But will they get better with Fields? I feel like we're seeing the best of him right now. So if that's the case, they won't be there at the end, in my opinion. Even though Tomlin's a great coach, they have a defense all the time. They're known for that. But he needs to, if he starts to be the Fields of old, then they won't be there at the end. Right. I'm not taking it. That's just the way I feel about that.
On your Russell Wilson comment, you're 100% right. He became a prima donna. And I told people if he learned his lesson with this humbling experience in the Broncos, he still has a little bit in the tank. But how much we don't know. But you're right. I think his last 4 to 5 years is a product of his head being so big he can't fit it through a doorway. All right, we're gonna go through a lightning round here. I'm gonna ask you the player. I'm gonna state how much their contract is. You're gonna tell me promised land or bust. Well, let's not use bust because. Well, I guess in a way it's a bust based off the contract. So
because you're paying him so much, right? I mean,
exactly. Super Bowl or bust. So
before you do this, one of the things I wanted to say about Young is if he makes the decision to let Dalton take him under his wing and learn from him, it will go a long way for him. But if he's going to be, a young, inexperienced, arrogant athlete and sort of reject Dalton as the starter and not learn anything from him, that will be a big negative for him going out in the future. But okay, I'm ready for the lightning round. Let's go.
Well, in his defense, he seems like a very down-to-earth kid. So I think it's actually what kind of person Dalton is. Is he willing to be a mentor?
That's a good point. That's a good.
So, all right, Super Bowl or bust?
Okay.
Dak Prescott, 4-year, $240 million contract.
Bust.
Well, that's great.
Bust before you just say his name. It's bust.
Okay, Trevor Lawrence, 5-year, $275 million contract. Super Bowl bust. Tua Tagovailoa, 4-year, $212 million contract.
Well, bust because of the injuries. He won't be playing much longer.
Yeah. But I have to interject. If I'm Mike McDaniels, I don't want him. Not because I don't like him, not because I don't believe in him, but you can't sit there in today's franchise structure of money. He can't count on him. He could go down with another concussion. And he's stuck with another backup. So if I'm Mike McDaniels, I'm like, I need a quarterback I can count on. So
and he's from Alabama. No.
That's right. He is another Alabama. Justin Herbert, 5-year, $263 million extension. Super Bowl or bust.
I'm a fan of his. I'm a Charger fan. To be transparent here, I want everybody to realize that I'm a Charger fan. I would say Super Bowl, but it might not be with the Chargers. But I think Super Bowl for him. Yeah,
he's got the talent, but there's what I call the Chargers curse.
Yeah, they charger everything. If you fail miserably, you chargered it. So that's the term.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, let's
All
see
right,
if Paul
Kyler Murray.
Buck-
Kyler Murray, 5-year, $231 million extension.
Well, right now it looks okay. I'd say bust based on everything else, though.
All right, Jared Goff, initially 4-year, $134 million. Let's skip
Bust.
him. Let's skip him for now. You think bust? Okay. Kirk Cousins, 4-year, $180 million contract.
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl. Wow. Okay.
Because I think he's what he brings is leadership. That not a lot of he really brings leadership to the club, so that's really important too. So that's why
I think his belief in God, family, and camaraderie. I think that gives him a potential. But
yep.
When I look at the Falcons, I think Chargers. There's just that curse,
Ever since
Jordan Love,
that Super Bowl, they've never recovered since they gave that Super Bowl away to the Patriots. They've never recovered from it.
You can say the same thing about the Chargers with the 49ers shellacking they took under Bobby Ross.
Were they even dressed for that game? I'm not sure they were.
I know. Yeah. Jordan Love, 4-year, $220 million contract.
Super Bowl. I would say Super Bowl for Jordan Love.
Yeah. I watched him develop last year, and I told everybody, this kid is doing all the right things. Fans are fans. Oh, they sucked. I'm like, no, he's going to be good. Derek Carr, 3-year, $122 million extension with the Raiders release, and then he signed a big contract with the Saints.
I'm gonna say Super Bowl for him only because he has the experience and they might have the right pieces there for him, and it looks like they do right now. So that would go with and they didn't lay out as much for him as they might have had to years ago. So I'd say Super Bowl.
And I think Clint Kubiak, Gary Kubiak's son. I just think right fit. It's also about timing. Right fit, right offensive coordinator. Okay. Exactly. Lightning round part 2. Gave up too soon, or were they true busts? These are high draft picks. In fact, these are first top 10, top 5 overall number 1 or 2 draft picks. David Carr, selected first overall by the Texans 2002, struggled behind a weak O-line, lackluster career. Gave up too soon / bad team, or was he a true bust?
Oh, I'd say true bust.
All righty. Here's an easy one, I'm sure, for you. Ryan Leaf, second overall by the Chargers. He was tumultuous on the field and off the field. Gave up to bust. Okay.
He's a true bust. And by the way, there's another example of the front. Well, the Chargers have a terrible ownership in the front office. How they didn't know that about the guy, right? Like that's almost impossible not to know. But anyways,
it was Bobby Beathard. Wasn't it Bobby Beathard still there?
I believe so. Yeah. And that's a little bit of that FOMO thing. You got a guy up in Washington State. He looks really good if we don't take. And what they took him over Peyton Manning, and Peyton Manning was saying he wouldn't go to the Chargers or whatever.
No. That was Eli. They took Manning first. I think they would have taken Manning if they had their druthers, but they were stuck. Yeah. Manning went first, and I think that's a great example of FOMO, meaning it didn't matter what they believed, everything was against him. It was a lose-lose. They ignore him, don't take him, they're going to get crapped on. So
I got in front of the lightning round there, but bust on him. Yeah, bust.
All right, Marcus Russell, first overall pick 2007. Love cheeseburgers more than football. Bust. Okay. Bust. Yeah. Okay. Tim Couch, first overall by the Browns, had injuries. It's just the Browns. Wrong franchise / culture, or true bust?
It was a true bust. I mean, let me give you a little background on why. So Hal Mumme, who was the coach of Kentucky, was one of my first receiver coach at Texas El Paso. And he liked the West Coast kind of style, right? So that fit Tim Couch to a T at Kentucky, but not at the NFL level. So I mean, I would say bust no matter what system he went into, but it worked great in college, but it just didn't translate to the NFL.
Okay, here's one you may not. This may be too far back even for you. So if you don't even remember him, we'll pass.
I'll let
Achilles
you know.
Smith, third overall by the Bengals in 1999. The reason I say Achilles, people, I'm 57, so the hype around this kid was like enormous, and he was
Yeah.
a bad franchise because the Bengals or true bust.
I mean, I'm going to say true bust, but it's some of the it's almost unfair that to even have to say true bust or not, because some of these guys, it was never going to work, right? I mean, and so you have to say true bust, but yeah, so that's where I would say there.
Yeah, no, I agree. The final one on this list, Trey Lance, third overall by the Niners. The Niners gave up 3 first-round picks for him. They got lucky and had Brock Purdy as a final pick in the 7th round that year, too. Just bad situation or true bust?
Total bust.
Gotcha. All right, here's my take. I love these things. David Carr, I just thought bad franchise. I don't know if it would have been Super Bowl bound, just terrible. He led the league in sacks for 3 years. Yeah. Ryan Leaf, true bust. Jamarcus Russell, true bust. I mean, the guy's being taken to court now in October for cashing a check meant to go to the high school team. Tim Couch, I have no clue, so your insight was great. Achilles Smith, I thought was a true bust. Trey Lance, I'm going to cheat. Since it's my outline here, I don't know, but I would say true bust right now. But I think bust because he seems to be injury prone. Plus, he came from North Dakota State, small college. I'm like, why are you giving up the farm for a kid who played in a small college, didn't even play a full 4-year career? It's like it just made no sense. I thought that was a FOMA. They created their own FOMA, the Niners, in that situation.
Yeah.
All right. A couple of success stories. I know you're not a Jared Goff fan, but he seems to be having a resurgence with the Lions. Took him a couple of plays shy. In fact, a bad coaching call, in my opinion, shy of maybe going to the Super Bowl. And Josh Allen. People forget his rookie season. They were his first half of that year. They were screaming bust. But then they got it together. They developed him properly. And now he's right now, if you ask me who's leading the league for MVP right now, Josh Allen. Your quick thoughts on Allen and Goff?
Well, Goff, the problem with Goff is if you pressure him, he's done. So,
you're right. Yeah. He scares the hell. He's the one who scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, well, the reason the Giants beat Brady 2 times in the Super Bowl is because they got pressure on him. Like no other team could get pressure on him like the Giants did with the coverage and then the outside guys. So they beat Brady with pressure, and that's the only way you can beat Brady is get to his feet and his knee, his legs, right? And so Goff is a little bit like that to me, right? And he makes mistakes though when he has pressure, so there's turnovers.
Right. No, you're right. You hit it on the head.
And Allen, who came from Wyoming, who they were in the WAC when I was there.
Yeah,
so here's the thing: you had Sam Darnold, you had Allen, and who's the guy from UCLA that year? I can't remember his name.
Josh Rosen, I think. Was it Josh Rosen?
Yeah, Rosen. So everybody was all over Rosen and Darnold, and they forgot about Allen. He was in the talk, but he's from Wyoming. Well, he went to the perfect place. Wyoming's cold. It's mile high. He goes to Buffalo. He's a tough kid. He can run the ball. So, to me, he's it. I mean, it won't be long before he's got a Super Bowl. And if the NFL allows the officiating crew to officiate the game neutral, not slanted towards Taylor Swift, Buffalo will beat Kansas City.
Exactly. Yeah. To add to that, I think Josh Allen is fighting some bad in-game coaching decisions too. That 13-second, to me, that is completely on the coaching staff. Real quick on Jared Goff, you're absolutely right. I'm rooting for him, but I cringe when it's crunch time and they have to count on him. To me, he does not have the ability to carry a team. And as a first overall draft pick, number 1 overall, that to me is incumbent on you. You're number 1 overall, the best of the best. You're supposed to be able to put a team on your shoulders, and I don't think you can do that. And
when you do that, you can't read your own headlines in the paper. You can't get lost in LA at night. and you need to study and do all the work that you need to do that a number one draft pick does to be successful. And he got lost in California, in LA, I think.
Right.
He got stuck in some transition, but that didn't help him. So I think he's matured. So we'll see what happens.
I agree with that. Bill, I'd like to bring you back next week because we're at an hour 15 minutes, and I want to take some time with this NIL because you have great insight on that. So I'd like to bring you back to talk about that if that's okay.
That'd be great.
But okay, perfect. I want to talk about Sluka's because the NIL drama, for the people to give you a preview, where the Matt Sluka case is one that is unique today, but I believe will become the norm. He goes to a school. He says the school promised him this. In essence, what he's saying is, y'all promised me more money than you're giving me. He quit on a team week 3 because had he played another week, he would not have been able to redshirt himself to remain eligible. And a lot of these players, I think they're getting agents and they have parents who go, the NFL's no guarantee. We got to maximize your college dollars. And that's a long, big topic that's fascinating. And Bill, I think, has great insight being a former college player. So to everybody else, come back next week for that. Bill, you are phenomenal. I love your takes. And I love your takes. It was inside baseball tweaks, but not in the weeds. You kept it with layman terms. And that's what I think. We don't get enough of that as I'm a fantasy sports guy. I'm a data guy, but to get an analysis from people who play the game, to me, is always special. When I used to go to the Senior Bowl, when I used to go to the Combine, and I went to these things, I was treated with the utmost respect because I was a data guy. I knew my stuff. But I looked at those guys and I was like, God, I'd give my left cojones to sit there and be able to have your God-given talent. There's only one time I chuckled when they sat there said at the Combine, when they said, they're doing quarterbacks are coming in. They brought them in the groups. And I looked up, that's not a quarterback. That's a linebacker. It's linebackers. No, it's quarterback. It was Jared Luck from Kentucky. And people don't forget, Jared Luck was built like a linebacker.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, yeah, he was.
Big boy. He made Josh Allen look small. Oh, man. So to everybody else, Bill, thank you for coming on. To everybody else, you can find this podcast. First of all, hit share, hit like, and subscribe. But you can find this podcast and our political podcast, Libertarian and Conservative Talk, as well as our basketball podcast. And we got other podcasts down the pipe at grumblingsmedia.com. You can also find this podcast on our social media profiles, YouTube, Rumble, Pandora, Spotify, and Apple under the profile handle Grumblings Media. I am William Del Pilar. This is Points on the Board. Thank you to Bill as our guest. And until next time, I bid you adieu.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these 2 boxes.